Welcome to Craft Chocolate TV. My name is Dylan with Manoa Chocolate, and today we are going to do a milk chocolate recipe. This is our recipe, and it's very simple. So we have cacao nibs, sugar, milk powder, and cocoa butter. Our ratios are 300 grams of nibs, 300 grams of sugar, 200 grams of milk powder, and 200 grams of cocoa butter. So now you're going to need to know the other necessary tools, which would be a stone melanger. This one is from Premier Wonder Grinder. In fact, we've got another model here. This is from Cocoa Town. We do have an episode that we did on comparing and contrasting these two brands. There's no right or wrong here, but you're gonna need one of these and you'll be able to make chocolate at home. You are going to need a scale. Very simple. You tear your bowl, you put your ingredients in so you know how much you're adding into your stone melanger. You're going to need a couple scrapers and some type of cloth to clean up. Now, step one, you're going to want to turn this on. It's very loud. Oh, this is also very helpful, a heat gun. Why I'm using the heat gun initially is to warm up the stones, the wheels, the base is stone, and that makes loading the nibs easier because nibs are half cocoa butter. And so the hotter this is, the easier it is going to be to refine the nibs right off the bat. I'm going to use this throughout the process of loading the nibs, which in this case is only 300 grams, so it should go pretty fast. When we turn this on, we're going to start adding the nibs. Nibs are the first thing that we add, followed by waiting 6 hours, 3 to 6 hours, and adding sugar, because these are the things that take the longest to refine. So here we go. Oh my God, that smells good. It's been somewhere between 5 and 6 hours now. It is now refined enough to the point where we can add sugar. So, heat gun is important if you want to speed up the process, not essential. Now we have sugar, and sugar is made of crystals. And so we're going to add all this sugar, but the ratio of sugar is equal to the ratio of nibs that we added to this little stone melanger, which means it's going to become too viscous. So what we have to do is add additional butter, which is already half of the nibs. So we're now going to increase the ratio of butter so that this can refine to the point where it's not so viscous, it's going to get really thick, like brownie mix. So we need to add some butter as well, and we can do that by eye according to how thick we see it in here now. And it's important to know one other thing. In order to stay clean and evenly refine the sugar, I'm going to add it in a part of the grinder where it's not going to go on the shafts or the sides of the stones as much. I'm going to load it where the stone is spinning down, and that way I know all the sugar goes in evenly. Sugar is a crystal, and what we have to do is fracture these crystals evenly for many, many hours to the point where you don't taste the grittiness of the sugar crystal. Here we go. It's getting very viscous right now. It's getting very thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of cocoa butter to thin out the viscosity. important to remember that when we're using the heat gun, you don't leave the heat gun applying heat in one place for too long, because you'll either melt the chocolate or you'll start to melt the plastic that actually is holding the wheels together. So be very careful not to leave the heat gun in one location. Make sure you move it around. Now that we've got cocoa nibs added, and convert it into cocoa liquor, and then we've added sugar and a little bit of butter, we have to wait until tomorrow before we add the milk powder. See you tomorrow. We have now been refining our nibs and our sugar for about a day. We now have cocoa butter and milk powder to complete the batch. The sugar has been refined enough, so now it's time to start adding milk powder and cocoa butter. Milk powder and cocoa butter. Here we go. I'm doing the same thing as I did with the sugar, where I'm adding the milk powder right behind the wheels. And as I'm doing it, I'm watching how thick it gets, because I don't want to burn the motor out. I don't want too much strain on the motor, which is why we need all this additional cocoa butter. So now I can see it's getting thick. I'm going to dump some cocoa butter in there. There we go. We're using milk powder that's 28.5% fat from Humboldt Creamery. It's all organic milk powder, and this is what we use for all our milk chocolates. There we go. It's getting thick again. And the cocoa butter just thins it right out. It really loves cocoa butter. You absolutely need cocoa butter if you're going to make a milk chocolate recipe. Almost done. There we go. I'm going to add the rest of the milk powder now, or the cocoa butter. Here we go. Try and clean things up a little bit. Now, one of the last things I'm going to do before I walk away here and wait for another 12 hours is I'm going to scrape the sides. I want everything refined very evenly. In fact, you can't do this enough. The more you scrape the sides, the more evenly refined your chocolate's going to be. Because remember, you want all the sugar crystals, all the fibers of the nibs, all the milk powder to evenly go under, as evenly as you can, under these stones so everything breaks and fractures evenly. So that's the point in scraping the sides, and you'll have a smoother, creamier milk chocolate. All right. See you in 12 hours. So it's been about 6 hours since we've added all our ingredients. And it's important to also taste this all the time to know how much things have refined in how much time. So, take some spoons, scrape the sides again, always scraping the sides. And it's really these little things of knowing when to add butter with what raw materials, scraping the sides, that's going to make good chocolate, because the process is simple. It's not difficult, but you have to know when to add things and in what order. And we're trying to make good chocolate here. So it's still gritty, but it hasn't been enough time. And in these grinders, it usually takes 2 or 3 days, depending on how new they are, to achieve that refined 20 sub 20 micron level. And that's really what we're shooting for in our chocolates all the time, is to always have a mouthfeel that is silky smooth. Because we found customers and general feedback from everybody who eats our chocolate, they like more smooth, creamy chocolate. And you can achieve that in these, it just takes days. Whereas in machines like ball mills or roller mills, you can do it in hours or even less. So we're gonna give this some more time. We're gonna taste it tomorrow, and we should have a silky smooth, delicious milk chocolate. All right, it's been 2 days. We are now going to check the micron size. We're going to make sure we are smooth and creamy. and then we'll have completed our milk chocolate recipe. So, dipping one of our spoons in here, you can see the texture is way smoother. Just looking at it, it looks great. Now, this is a grindometer, and we're gonna dab some chocolate on it. And now we're gonna pull downward, and you can see the numbers here. They're going down because this inner line are pores, they're little holes, and they're big up here, and they're small down here. So this represents around 20 microns. This is 35 microns, that is 50 microns. And so as we pull this squeegee down, we're gonna see the major outliers, which are, say, sugar crystals, or maybe radicals that are inside the seed that didn't get refined well enough. And now, as we pull down, we can see where it starts to break. So ignore these really big pieces. We can see predominantly it's filling in until around 20, and then down here it's more and more, well, it's not filling in the holes. So here we're mostly full, except for the big pieces. And then down here, it's mostly empty. But it's pretty well refined. It's never gonna be perfect, especially in these type of machines. That's how stone grinders are. At least this one's been used a lot. So we're not gonna get as even a refinement, but we use these for test batches, and they really do serve their purpose. But this is one way, it's a very simple, ingenious way to test your micron size. Now, one last thing I'm gonna leave you with is be very careful with how you're loading your grinder. You don't wanna go too fast, or you will burn out the motor or break the belts that make this spin. So when you're adding your nibs especially, either pre-refine them in a blender or a Champion juicer, and then you can add everything, or just slowly add your nibs. If you see it getting too thick, you use your heat gun and heat it up, and you'll watch it become less viscous as the fat is exposed as it begins to crush. Same thing for sugar, same thing for milk powder, and that's why you have that extra cocoa butter there. You see how easy that was? There you have it. Making milk chocolate at home. Good luck, have fun. We'll see you next time. Aloha.